Hey everyone! Welcome to another episode of Cracking the Code to Your Re-Challenges. My name is Diana Lizarazo and my co-host is Elizabeth Kelly. Every Friday we host an episode. We're hosting Cracking the Code to Your Real Estate Challenges. So we're here to help you solve the problems that you come up with in the real estate investing world. So if you guys have any challenges, go into my platform, realestateinvestorfam.com, and you can share the challenges you're having and we can come on and help you solve those problems, give you some points of views. And even in the audience, feel free to share your point of views because the purpose of this show is to mastermind and find solutions for you guys because we all have different points of view. So let's get Elizabeth on. Let's send her some hearts. Let's send her some fire. Let's welcome her on this. Oh, there we go. Hey, Elizabeth.
Hey Diana, how are you this week?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Can you hear me okay? I'm not wearing headphones today. I'm hoping that's all right.
Yeah, no, I can hear perfectly fine. So,
Awesome.
so today we get to chat about, and I thought actually LTB, and I was thinking that it would be a great topic just because I actually did my first eviction ever. And I went through that
Wow.
and I got to actually see the people that were on there, how they're having their conversations or what's going on. So I thought it'd be really great to talk about that and like hear your experiences and to share like what I saw.
Sure, I'm happy to talk LTV. I've been a number of times, both as a property owner and as a property manager. So, I mean, it was LTV is a little bit different these days than it was a few years ago, but yeah, I definitely got some experiences to share with you for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, so I just like that. I was there 2 weeks ago, my very first time, and I just want to share some different things that I noticed. So the very first person I saw was um, the landlord had their information. The tenant was not prepared at all, didn't understand the process at all, so was getting stopped every second because the landlord gave their information. So I guess it was the landlord who was probably gave an N for something like that. And then so obviously the tenant has to rebuttal and ask questions. And it was a whole complaining session. And so the adjudicator every second, like stopping them to keep things on track. And so that was one thing that I noticed that I realized, the importance of a lawyer or a paralegal was so important because this poor guy, doesn't matter who it is, landlord or tenant, but when you're not asking the right questions, I noticed that really in that case, I couldn't actually tell like who was going to win or not because they also don't tell you. I don't know if before they used to, but they don't tell you. Some of them, they'll give you a strong indication. Like in my case, they were like basically, you got it, without telling you.
Yeah.
But with them, he's like, I need to check over the data. So because it was a complaining session, really it was, I think what he was doing was he's probably going to revise and be like, what does the data show, the information you've provided? Because clearly, like, there wasn't, the conversation was kind of useless. That's what it seemed like to me because the tenant couldn't figure out, like, he just wanted to complain and not ask questions. And then so instigating the landlord, because then the landlord's like trying to prove her point. So it was just like, so that was one that I thought was just really interesting, the impact of having a paralegal, especially if it's your first time. Like for me, for example, it was my first time. I think these were the first few times. It's kind of nice to probably get, if you want to try to do it yourself, at least do a first few with the paralegal because I felt very secure. He got me, I had so much evidence because the paralegal was like, you have to have this, make sure you have that. We need written in this, screenshots of that, da 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 da, This poor guy couldn't even show, like, help kind of like prove his point if he had a point,
Yeah,
you know, to
yeah,
prove.
yeah, yeah. I love what you're saying. Let me add a couple of things. First, I want to just cover our butts. This is a disclaimer. We are not paralegals. We are not lawyers. We are speaking strictly from our own experience. We are not giving legal advice. So, blanket disclaimer
Yeah,
there.
thank you for doing
Um,
it.
no problem. Um, so there's a couple of things that I had. What I always found set me up for success with the landlord tenant board was preparation was key. If you are not prepared, if you are not the most prepared person in the room, then there is a big problem and you have not taken this seriously enough. You have not approached this in the right way. In the past, I used to do self-representation. I would never do that anymore. The way that tenants have access to legal assistance, you are basically going up against a lawyer or a paralegal as an individual, and I would never recommend that. Not in criminal court and not at the LTB. You should always hire a paralegal as a consultant to be able to represent you, because even if you know and understand the case itself, you don't always know and understand the case law, the history, areas where it would be beneficial to go and, well, in this decision, this was the outcome, but here's where it applies to this. Like, if you don't have that knowledge, you shouldn't be self-representing, because you are not putting your best foot forward. And quite honestly, the last time we hired a paralegal was $800, and it was the best $800 I've ever spent.
Mm-hmm.
That there's a lot of misnomers out there, and like you said, Diana, the LTB, not a therapy session. This is not your time to air your grievances, and there are some members that are more lenient with that. There's other ones that are super strict and will cut you off at the knees. It's always better to err on the side of cautions and say as little as possible, but respond to anything that is asked of you. And if you are ever going to be, even when you have a paralegal, if you're ever going to be in front of the LTB, watch sessions first. Know what's going on, understand what you're walking into. It's not exactly like a courtroom, like you don't call them your honor and stuff like that. But there is definitely a very legal process there. And I mean, I've been doing them, everything's virtual now, but I remember going to like the Durham office or the Durham site for landlord tenant board hearings. And it was funny because you could always kind of see and feel the differences between the tenants and the landlords. And you knew that everybody could see and feel that. So it was very much a feeling of these are people who have, and these are people who don't have. And it reinforces that idea that landlords are dirtbags, that they're scum, that they're entitled, all these other horrible things that are said about us. And it doesn't do a very good job of connecting, good people who are investing in housing and trying to help people out by, we have a housing crisis right now. So anyways, those are my kind of thoughts. But yes, I'm a little bit passionate about LTB. I do my best to avoid it because I don't ever like ending up in court, because even though you have case law and you have all these other things, you get somebody on a bad day and you really, there's no guarantees about how stuff's going to turn out.
Completely agree with you. And actually, you're saying something else that I found also interesting, because that was one of the other things I wanted to talk about. Another thing that I noticed when I was there was, as the landlord, again, really important to have that paralegal in there, especially if you don't really know very well what you're doing, is because there was another person who went, who you could see the intentions of that person was he just wants to kick them out and didn't really have any valid reason for it.
Yeah.
And 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 if he just went to a paralegal, looked at his document, the lease agreement, he could have probably just saved the money and not even gone to it, because he was trying to kick people out, saying like overcrowding, and was using the excuse of that they had 4 cars parked there, but actually in the lease agreement it actually said that he's allowing 4 cars to be parked in the parking in the driveway. And I don't know, because he's like, no, there's 2. And even the adjudicator's like, write in your lease 4, All right. And so I was just like, oh man, this poor guy just spent money and didn't like, he's probably clearly just wants to, whatever reason is happening, trying to get these people out. Um, and so I think that was another thing, basically, you're also saying, you know, it's like, it's just so important to have people there that, like you said, they know the laws, they know everything. They give you a second pair of eyes to make sure you're doing things the right way. Um, because either he was using the wrong tactics to get these people out, or he was actually just not really well informed on how it works and just could have saved the money. I mean, and for I think just submitting is probably like $100 or something like that. I don't know. Um, but either still, you know, it's just like, why waste all that time? And then you're still in the same position anyways. And I feel like if you're going to the LTB, you're kind of starting already putting yourself in a really tense situation with the tenant, you know, whereas like this kind of could have been resolved separately without going to there. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, you know, going along with what you're saying, one of the biggest downfalls I've seen from people at the LTB is ego. When people go in assuming that they know more or that they're better than anyone else, those are the people who really struggle in front of the landlord tenant board. You have to really kind of approach it with the idea that, you know, this person who's sitting in front of you has probably seen a lot of people ahead of you and has heard a lot of stories. If you think you're going to go in and lie or say that, you know, someone's moving in, or, you know, any of the other stories that can be told on both sides, because let's be real here, there are some terrible landlords and property owners out there, just like there are some terrible tenants, and the terrible people at both ends of the spectrum are what make it miserable for the good people. Just like my husband always says, he goes, you know, locks keep the honest people out, but if you're a criminal, a lock means nothing to you. So um, there are those bad landlords that come in with those big egos, and they think they don't need a paralegal, or they think that, you know, I'm just going to tell them this, oh, I'm going to sign an affidavit and I'm going to say that I'm moving in there with no intentions of it. You know, having someone to help you build a case, having that documentation, that is key. There are so many times when I've showed up to the landlord tenant board and I literally come in with a binder and I have everything laid out, and I have like a synopsis on the front, and then I reference tabs in the binder. This is my evidence. Here's the lease they signed. Here's a statement from their account history from Buildium. Here are the notes that are time and date stamped in Buildium and are submitted here. Here's photos of the place before they moved in. Here's the current condition of the place. Here's all the utility bills that they are not paying and the charges that have been added back on. When you show up with that, it's hard to argue with any of it. And when you show up showing that you are competent, you are organized, you are fair, this is one of the things, one of the reasons, even if I didn't want to try and work with my tenants, I would always try and come up with a payment plan, because I want to be able to go and say, listen, we've had payment plans. Here's what we agreed to. Here's the emails we agreed to it in. Here's the payment document that they signed saying they were going to make these payments. They have now breached it. Here's the account statement showing what they've actually paid. We are not willing to entertain a payment plan. We want to go right to eviction.
I love that, actually, because that was what we were told to do and what we did too, and probably why our case was so strong and just like easy to put through was exactly what you were saying. We were told, you know, we're trying to, like you said, create a payment plan and showing that we both agreed to it, and and then showing that we agreed, but nothing ever changed, you know.
Yeah.
And then because we actually did, I think, two or three as we were waiting for Elle to be like trying to help things out, like, okay, you know, clearly this doesn't work, what's happening, you know, what should we do next? So even while you're waiting and you're going through the process, you could still try to fix things and try to make things work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, depending on where you are and how many cases there are, you might be waiting 8 months to 12 months before you get a hearing, depending on what your situation is. So that doesn't mean that, my tenant doesn't hear from me. That doesn't mean that I'm not still trying to reach out. And sometimes, if you take the emotion out of this, it should really be a cost benefit analysis. So if you look at it and, you have someone in there right now and you anticipate 8 months to a hearing date. So you add up what that missed rent would be. And then you add up, potential damages. And then you put on another 6 weeks until you get the hearing, get the document, and then you're able to file with the sheriff and actually get them out. When you look at the cost of all that, I know some people are really against cash for keys, and I understand that from like a fundamentally emotional perspective, but it's kind of like insurance companies. And, if someone files a lawsuit, they might take a look at it, and if it's not worth their time to defend it, they might offer them a token amount to basically go away and stop wasting their time. There are situations where sometimes that is actually the better decision to make, because then you have the opportunity to, you pay someone $3,000 or $5,000 to go away, and then they leave. You have the opportunity to fix up your unit, re-rent it, and start getting money coming in. Now, that is not ideal. That is definitely not my go-to. But this should be a business decision. And I think part of the reason we have so many challenges with this is because so many people believe that housing is a right, and they bring emotion into it, even when it's not something that the government says is a right. Does that make sense?
100%. And I wanted to even reiterate exactly what you're saying about the emotional part, because that I feel like usually is the biggest problem to the tenant and landlord disputes. Someone gets offended. Someone is like, you use the wrong tone or something,
Yeah.
and then people just get bent out of shape. And yeah, if you take that emotion out of it, which I know some people it's hard, you're seeing the money going out of the window kind of a thing. But if you do it, I kind of agree with you. I think that's why I've been pretty lucky. I think I've been like 8, 10 years with having tenants, and this is my first one. So I felt like we've always really tried so hard to, maintain that relationship. I remember once actually I got really pissed. It's also good to have someone else there too, because usually I'm the one calming my husband down when things happen. I remember there was one where this person just like put me over the edge, and I was like ready to chop off their head or something. And I remember I called my husband. I'm like, can you believe what this person is doing? And I like have a mental breakdown almost. And my husband's like, wait until I get home. And I was just like, I had to like literally put my bed under the pillow and go downstairs. I'm like, I was just so ready to be like, I want to like, I was like, I was just so angry. And I'm just like, I wanted to respond back.
Yeah. It's hard, right? It can be a very emotional situation, but you have to keep in mind that the person who loses control is ultimately the loser in the situation. You want to be making good decisions, and that requires staying calm, having a clear head, keeping things in perspective. And this is what I keep reminding myself, when I've gone through challenges, when I've had struggles, especially in real estate, when, deals haven't gone the way that I wanted them to, or, partnerships haven't turned out the way that I wanted them to. I keep reminding myself that the most important thing in the world to me is my health and my family. Like, I mean, I understand money is stressful, and we need to have money as well, but typically there's an opportunity for me to make another dollar, but when I lose my health, I can't. So I'm not willing to jeopardize my health for a dollar. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And just leaving that time to not think about it, or maybe you do think about it, but as in to more reflect and just not respond. You do find the solution will come if you give yourself the time.
Mm-hmm.
Also, which is also a nice thing, because like that in that situation, we had the person trying to extort money from us. They wanted to do cash for keys. And so they went to the city and put all these complaints to try to get our building shut down. And then they go and we'll stop everything if you give us cash for keys. And so I was just like, what happened? Because we had a very good relationship with them too, actually. So it was like a flip just like a flip of the switch kind of happened because they had some personal things happen. And it just like I think she just took out her everything on everyone
Yeah.
around her. And we were also part of that
Mhm.
craziness. Um, but like we stood our ground and we didn't let ourselves get taken advantage in that case. We felt that we are not doing cash for keys because I mean, she already had started the process anyways. We had the city coming and everything. So we're like, we're going to have to do it anyways. But what we got really lucky on is because also really important, I think, is when you're going through the permit process, we went through permits and everything on the building. And and a lot of people like to like, let's not do it or whatever. But in this case, like that, I felt like this is why it's so important to do because you just never know what will happen. And
Yeah.
the person that came to check everything was the person that already had done all the like approved all the permits. So he was on our side and basically made her feel very dumb and just kind of put her in like, you have this massive 20-page list to say of things and none of them are issues.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we had to spend some money to prove it, obviously. Like we had to get our plumbers in and all like certain things to get checked, but everything checked out. But as soon as that person came in, gave us approval that nothing was fine, the building didn't have to get shut down, she sent in her whatever end form, I can't remember, saying that she's out of there in 90 days.
Mhm.
And she just knew she was leaving, I guess, because of all the personal issues and just, I guess was like, hey, maybe I can get some cash out of it and destroy our lives in the middle of it. I don't
Yeah.
know. But it felt like when you do things the right way and you just go through the process, yes, there's some money that we had to pay, but like in that case, we did actually end up getting a good tenant in the sense like she does care about her credit report. She actually like that, like it's literally, I think like life experience just like threw a curveball and she just took it out on everyone. And but like that, like another person would have just sat there, waited to get an eviction, and probably not paid anything, right? But this person was still at least responsible person. I don't know, went a little cuckoo, but like that, she was like, I'm out of here. I think she was very embarrassed about what she did. I think the city kind of made her feel, embarrassed. But it ended up like I feel like if you just get the right information, do things the right way for the first time around, things can come to you. Maybe they'll cost a little bit, but I don't think they'll cost as much as, for example, if I never got permits and did everything without it, and then all of a sudden they're making us rip everything out, and we're spending maybe much more than we expected. What are your thoughts?
I I agree completely. And I really think the very first thing to do to avoid the LTB is to determine your standards and adhere to them. So my personal philosophy or rule is I don't want any illegal units in any of my buildings. I never would want there to be a fire or something else that would jeopardize somebody's life and to be responsible for that. So my first priority, all of my units always legalized, everything done to code, everything done properly. The second way to avoid the LTB is to screen properly because like you alluded to, we don't have a lot of control once a tenant is in the unit, and quite honestly, there's not a lot of repercussions for non-payment. So we have to do our due diligence at the beginning, and if your spidey sense is tingling, as long as you can still reasonably and legally say I'm not renting to you, then you need to do that if something happens. We have a couple more tools at our disposal now. We've got things like front lobby, for example, where the monthly payments that our tenants are making every month, we can absolutely report those now. We have the opportunity to be able to register on their credit, which we didn't used to have. We have the opportunity now to be able to send them to collections, which is more common now than it used to be. But there's still not a lot of repercussions. Like in my area, Kirkland Lake, people are not as concerned about what their credit score as they are in Toronto, for example. There's Easy Home is probably one of the biggest sources of credit in Kirkland Lake. People just go there and rent furniture. Like, it's just a very different environment. So making sure that we do our best to put high quality people in high quality units is really the best thing that I think we can do to avoid the LTB altogether, to keep those lines of communication open if someone's having difficulty or challenges. Like, I don't think we had to evict anybody during COVID for non-payment that weren't already not paying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember doing that because we kept those lines of communication open. And that being said, sometimes reasonable, normal people go through really challenging circumstances. Relationships fall apart, health deteriorates. These things happen, but we can't take it personally. We can't, we can't take somebody's response and put it on ourselves, which is part of the reason I think it was advantageous for me starting a property management company, because I was able to say, this is company policy. And if you're self-managing, you should be saying that too. You need to have policies. You need to have standards that you are going to follow. And if you miss paying your rent on the 1st, on the 2nd, we're going to end for you. You have 14 days to pay or make a payment plan, and this N4 will go away. But we're still going to follow. We're not going to listen to a text message or an excuse or a this or a that. This is the process we're going to follow. And it has to be the same
Mm-hmm.
across the board. There can't be any favoritism or preferential treatment or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like that. Treating it like a business is so important, and like that, taking the time, and sometimes having someone to help you take the time. Like I said, usually I'm the very like not emotionally like I don't get emotionally involved in things, and that one I just think maybe like she was having too many different things going on at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like ready to like rip her a new one. But thank God my husband was there to just like stay far away from your
Yeah.
phone. Let's wait until I get. And like that, I don't think I actually even responded till 2 days or 3 days afterwards. Like I actually like really left it alone because I would go to my email, and I feel like the best way to know is like you go to like send an email or a message, let's say, and if it like sounds super negative, it's like delete and let's wait a little longer.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
in the corporate world, it was like that. Like I remember someone would piss me off. I would like strike writing the message, and then like that just sounds like really negative. And I'm like, okay, let's work on something else. Let's wait it out a little bit. And then as soon as I felt like, okay, this sounds like politically correct, sounds like I'm a mature person. Okay, we can send that one out.
Yeah. Definitely, it's very rare that an emotional response, a knee-jerk emotional response, is the best way to handle things in a situation. And particularly in a situation like this, because housing is so important for people, right? And Maslow's hierarchy of needs says that, our security and safety is one of our priorities. So when you're talking about something that's this fundamental for so many people, and there's so many people who have such different opinions too. You look at some of the tenant advocate groups, and housing is a basic right and it's fundamental and it should be provided for us, and it should be they don't want there to be the small mom and pop landlords like there are in Ontario. But depending on who you talk to, somewhere between 50 and 70% of the landlords in Ontario are small mom and pops. So as much as you don't want that to be the case, I look at Toronto community housing and I'm like, you guys are not doing a very good job providing safe, clean, affordable, secure housing. So if you guys, who are the government funded sources, are terrible, why are people so opposed to mom and pop landlords? The flip side of that, though, is the mom and pop landlords, when they have families and they have jobs and they have one or two or three little properties, and somebody's not paying or somebody's doing damage or somebody's terrorizing the other tenants, then that's a major deal for them. And it's hard to keep emotion out of it. And, I have tenants who are saying, well, why can't you this and why can't you that? And I said, because you're not my only tenant. Because I have a responsibility to my other tenants to not put tenants in my units who are dealing drugs, to not put tenants in my units who are disrespectful and, cause issues and fight with the neighbors all the times. Like, I have a responsibility to all my tenants, not just one.
Or family. I've had to like do mediation within like the family unit. It's like my person's doing this, my person's doing that. Like you need to kick them out, and I'm like, I'm like, I am not getting involved in family issues.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but I can't. I was like, we need to, I'm like, I can't kick anyone out, thankfully. You know,
yeah.
at least in that sense, I'm like, thankful. 'Cause I'm like, you gotta, if you want to kick someone out, like in your household, that's something that you got to take care of. I'm like, I have no rights in any sense to be able to do that anyways.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with you. And I think that comes back to, what is your process if there is a disagreement between tenants or a dispute between tenants? And, if you have a property manager, they probably have a process. But if you are self-managing, like a lot of small mom and pop landlords are doing, then you really need to know, at what point do I give a letter if someone's not cleaning up dog poop? If there's, repeated noise complaints because there's fighting between family members over here, like what is the process that I'm going to follow? And once you establish that process, you need to stick to it, because you never want to end up in a situation where you're dragged in front of the Human Rights Tribunal trying to defend yourself saying I wasn't discriminating against someone. A lot of these times, as much as it's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, it's not always that way, right? There's always a little bit of things always end up a little bit tainted, and it's sort of, well, you ended up in front of the Human Rights Tribunal. It's kind of like the whole where there's smoke, there's fire.
Mhm.
So my preference
Exactly.
is to avoid that as much as I can by having my systems and processes and doing my due diligence in advance. Now, that being said, if you end up in front of the LTB, you better be darn sure I'm going to hire the best paralegal I can afford.
100%. Completely agree. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. If you guys love what you heard from Elizabeth, she's going to be tagged on here so you can follow her and stay up to date with what she's up to. If you love my shows, you want to know what shows are going up on, then definitely follow me, or same thing, my application. Definitely follow me to see what I'm up to these days. Elizabeth, thank you so much. It was always so much fun to chat with you about these topics.
You too. Thanks, Diana. Have a great week. Have a great week, everybody. And we'll see you again next Friday. I'm looking forward to it already.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Elizabeth.
Bye.